This meeting is being recorded.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Retro Horror Cinema, we have Brian Walker of Brian's Drive-In Theater. Greetings and welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm well tonight, Hercules. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm looking forward to learning all the reasons why going to the beach this year might not be the best of ideas.
Well, actually, for me, it's always a really good idea. But it's summer. It's the height of travel season, which really peaks, I think, around July 4th, and that's the next time I'm going on vacation. And I wanted to wear something vacation-like, so I wore one of my favorite T-shirts that I got in Mackinac City, Michigan, with the 500-pound man-killing plan. We've seen the shell, and that
Not
wasn't
500.
500 pounds, and it's not big enough to eat a man or anything like that, but it is really large, and it's a cool gift shop, so I had to buy the T-shirt.
And I love tourist traps like that. We'll just show
Me
you
too.
later on, but I love those.
Me too. I love all kinds of state parks, national parks, beautiful things in nature. I love going to cities, but really cheesy gift shops and things like that, that's where my heart lies. So, if they have the fortitude and the wherewithal to come up with really cool T-shirts like this, yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'm a sucker.
Yeah, me too. I have tons of stuff from these types of places, and I seek them out. There's a magazine called Weird New Jersey where we live, and also there are books about roadside attractions and things like that. So I have for all the states surrounding mine, the roadside attractions.
I have a number of those myself.
So
Anywhere that was along Route 66 may still have some vestiges of that. We were out west about a dozen years ago or so, and I had rented, I think we rented a convertible. It was a Mustang that was horrible. We've got a Mustang and I love it, but the one we rented was a piece of junk. Anyway, we dragged that thing like 2,500 miles around the desert Southwest and up into California. And even if it was a piece of junk, it got around. And we stayed in Williams, Arizona, which is fairly close to the Grand Canyon, about an hour or so away. And it still had so many vestiges of 50s and 60s Route 66 perfection, including the motel that we stayed in, which was just classics, 50s motel. There were some great roadside attractions, and Flint, I can't remember what it's called, not Flintstone Land, but it's a theme park. I think it's out of business now, but it's a theme park that's devoted to the Flintstones. And it is fairly close to Williams, about 20 miles or so. We didn't go to the theme park, but we did. I think we pulled into the parking lot and took some pictures, because they had Fred's car out front. So I wanted a picture of myself in the Flintstones mobile.
There were in northwestern New Jersey, like an hour and a half away from here, where we lived for a while. There were all sorts of weird things out there, and there was like storybook land also, and there was a castle in the middle of a Jersey town. And back when I had my TV show, I scoped these places out, and then when I was going to start another TV show, like some years later, I went and contacted them again. But since the pandemic, I don't think anybody's there anymore, because the times we've passed by, they looked abandoned.
That's a shame. I just hate to see, places where people used to have a good time. And there are a lot of amusement parks that are like that, whatever conglomerate owned them just went tits up, and now the place is just sitting there. There's an amusement park that's fairly close to where we are now, called Geauga Lake, where Greg and I live. That is called Geauga Lake. It's in Aurora, Ohio, and a rival amusement park bought it so they could shut it down. Isn't that shitty? I mean, I think that's horrible. If you really believed in your product, would you have to try to run the other people out of business? No. but that,
I grew up with Palisades and
that's my vacation horror. But anyway, I wanted to talk about the incredible number of films that are based around, vacation gone awry. So many of them are beach focused. Probably the most famous one we could ever talk about is Jaws, where it takes place in Martha's Vineyard, and it's an idyllic summer setting, and then this terrific thing happens, and people start getting eaten by sharks and things like that. A movie that I loved as a child. I think I was about 10 years old or so, and it was out in the summer of '75. And it was one of the first movies that I can remember that had a lot of heavy marketing surrounding it. In terms of, I had a Jaws T-shirt. I had the T-shirt before I got to see the movie.
I mean, years ago.
And my mother bought me this child's game, and you get a plastic shark, and it's got a spring-loaded mouth, and you put this is terrible. You put plastic garbage that comes with the shark, that came with the shark, that is, in the shark, and then you have to use this tong. In the whole game is using this tong to pull out like the discarded tire or the old lawn chair. I'm serious. That is the game. And it's at my mother's house somewhere, and my partner and I saw one in an antique store about, I don't know, 15 years ago, and he couldn't believe that something like that existed. And then when I told him I already had one, he was like, "Oh, wow, thanks. I don't have to buy this."
Yeah, sharks swallow garbage, and that's one of those facts.
But unfortunately,
on that by creating take the
they
garbage
swallow.
out.
Well, they swallow garbage because we keep throwing garbage into the ocean, which is disgusting. And it's 1,000 times worse than it was in the '70s when Jaws was, but shot. But that was the movie for me that kind of changed movies, period. I'm not a huge Steven Spielberg fan, but I gotta admit that I really like some of his early stuff. The later stuff, I just can't warm up to so much. I think that once you get so big, you surround yourself with yes people, and then what you're turning out is just this homogenized trash.
Right.
Well, that's true. The stuff that I like, you call it cheap, you call it a B movie, but it's edgy.
Right.
If you're making the same movie that everybody else is making, you're dull. What you need to do is to find your niche. You find somebody horrible as your protagonist, but do something different. Don't just offer up the same crap that everybody else is offering. Stand out, do something different. Be an individual, for God's sake. And that's the biggest reason I love B movies, is that they are often very irreverent, and there are plot lines in some of those old B movies that you would never have seen in an MGM film.
That's very true.
Yeah, very. Yes.
Since the days of VHS mom and pop stores, where there were the weirdest things on VHS.
Weren't those wonderful days too?
Those are phenomenal. But I'm finding that now,
those were meant for me. Yeah.
Between the dollar stores and streaming services, we've equaled that amount of creativity.
Almost too much, really.
Yeah.
It's
So
over.
now, go spend a few bucks at a $1.25 store now. There were $1 before, and you go watch the weirdest things in the world that you wouldn't imagine something like this would ever be made, but somebody made it. And I find myself enjoying these.
Well, and there's around here, in this general area, we have what we call Dollar General stores.
Oh, we have those too.
Okay. And they have an awesome selection of DVDs and Blu-ray. And And the one that we go to, which is about an hour away from here, they're in three different parts of the store, and wherever you turn, it's like, oh, wait a minute, and the ones that are nearest the register are the ones that I like the best. The impulse, because you find more outrageous things, as impulse buys. And we've pulled some like serious entertainment out of some of those. I got a set of W.C. Fields movies, and these weren't public domain movies. This was a Universal set that he had done, and for like $10 or something like that. And I love W.C. Fields, so I was thrilled, to get to get this. When I was a kid, 1930s movies were really popular in syndication in the 1970s, and like Laurel and Hardy, Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello, W.C. Fields, and some of the comedians that weren't as well known in the sound era, like Charlie Chase. Buster Keaton had been huge in the silent movies, but had some career reversals in the 30s. But you still, a lot of his movies here. Wheeler and Woolsey, I was a big fan of those too. But when it comes trying to circle back around to beach and vacation horror, the first movie I really wanted to talk about is a sequel. We've already talked about The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is just a really late Universal horror classic. I mean, I think it's a brilliant movie. I would love to have seen it in its original 3D release. I think that would have been just mind-blowing. But since we've already talked about that, I thought we might talk about one of its sequels that was made just like a year or so later, called Revenge of the Creature. And it has the creature from Creature from the Black Lagoon in this sequel, and it stars John Agar, Laurie Nelson, who just passed away within the last year. Very pretty actress in the 50s. Was in a lot of movies too. She did a little bit of everything. She did Ma and Pa Kettle movies. She did horror films. She is the lead in Roger Corman's Hot Rod Girl, where she is a female drag strip driver. And in the movie, since Corman doesn't spend a whole lot on production, she had to drive her own Thunderbird. I hope she got a per diem for that or something. That's pretty harsh to have to bring your own car.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're looking at inexpensive movies, so I guess.
True, but if somebody said, "Well, I want to hire you because you have a nice car," I'd be like, "You're going to have to pay me more."
Right.
And John Bromfield is also in it. He is, spoiler alert, he is murdered by the creature from the Black Lagoon in Revenge of the Creature, that is. But part of that movie is, it was obviously shot in Florida, as all of those were, but it takes place at this tourist attraction where and ones that I remember when I was a kid. When I was a small child, we lived in Panama City, Florida, and there was a aquatic attraction very close by called Gulfarian, which I don't believe is there anymore. But they had various sea animal, well, not animals, but sea creatures, I guess I should say, on display for people to dolphins, things of that nature. And that's where the creature from the Black Lagoon has wound up. He's wound up in this tourist attraction, which is horrible. It's a horrible thing to do to an animal. A great thing to do for us as human beings, but that's a horrible thing, and I don't blame him for killing John Bromfield. Well, you know what I mean.
Well, now as you get older too, like you wonder at these locations, they were locations that were inexpensive to shoot at.
Yes.
Like when I made my movie and I was doing my show, we look for like campgrounds, we look for parks, we look for
Mhm.
what do you call it, near beaches like Coney Island, and places that offered a lot of interesting things to look at in
Mhm.
the background, but were dirt cheap to film in.
Well, and if you can afford, well, let me back up and say that if you can't afford a sound stage and sets, and things of that nature, yeah, head outside, and because you're going to find beautiful settings that always looks good, that always look good photographed. The Creature from the Black Lagoon was shot at what Greg, what is that? Was it Marineland? I think it was, yeah. Or is it Silver Springs? I guess this is something I should look up because everything's online now. We have been to both places, however, so I can vaguely talk about it. I think he's right. I think it is Silver Springs, which is unfortunately no longer a tourist attraction because you're not there's nothing to go for there anymore. But in the 1950s, was a great place for tourists to go, and interesting that they picked that. That would be tough to shoot a movie in a tourist trap, I would think. Gawkers, things of that nature. I guess if you did it in the off season, and I'm sure Florida used to have an off season. I don't think it does now. I think it's just crowded all the time. But you're right. I mean, it's a great place to shoot something. Now, have you ever seen, I'm going to go up a few years. Revenge of the Creature was 1955, and I pulled that out, just as an early example. But have you ever seen a movie called The Flesh Eaters?
That rings bells. I don't remember, but I've probably
I
seen it.
bet you I bet you probably have because it's been on TV ever since I can remember. I saw it as a little kid, and I keep stumbling upon it. The lead act, there's only one real actor in it, and he is a European actor named Martin Koslick, who was in Universal horror films in the 40s. He does. He's if you couldn't get Peter Lorre, this was the guy you got because he's got this great accent, and he's not ugly or anything like that, but he just sort of looks sinister.
Mhm.
He has a certain look about him that's like, okay, I can buy you as a villain. And did tons of TV in the 50s and 60s and 70s. He's the lead in it, and it was shot on Long Island at Montauk. And it's a really cheap, inexpensive little black and white movie, a lot of fun, kind of gross in spots. Um, has a great title too. I mean, the title alone's enough to make you throw a nickel at the person out front so you can get in and see it. But like a fun movie, like I said, cheap, but with a great character actor as the lead. I can't recommend. And The Flesh Eaters is cheap. I think that was one of the early VHS tapes I bought. So I mean, it's been around for a long time. What?
Silver Spring, it's state park.
Oh, Silver Springs is a state park.
It has a
Okay,
glass and have glass bottom boats.
I remember that. Yeah. Well, it's a shame that they ruined it by turning it into a state park. But I bet that gift shop is nothing like it used to be. Now, moving on, a movie that really holds a special place in my heart, one that I looked for years before I was ever able to find it. Now it's readily available, is The Horror of Party Beach. Such a great title. And the man who directed it is sort of an idol of mine. I do have a page at the drive-in in his honor. The director's name was Del Tenney, who had been a journeyman actor in the 50s and tried to break through into mainstream films. And you can see him here and there in some big pictures in the early 50s, but never really had any lines or anything like that. He went back to the East Coast at some point in the 50s. Married another person who wanted to be an actress, and also had like similar fate, just couldn't break through. And as it turns out, the woman he married was from a wealthier family. So with some with some financial backing, he made several horror films in the early 60s. And probably the best known one that he did was The Horror Party Beach, which
I
is
looked up when you were describing it and I found pictures. So I've seen that one too, long time ago.
it's a blast. I love the movie. It's got some weird quirks in it. And oddly enough, he's Del Tenney's fairly obscure, as a horror filmmaker, and he only did a few movies throughout the course of his career. But I have been interviewed more in the press about his films than anyone else's.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's just sort of like a guarantee, like, once every year or two, it'll pop up, and then I'll do an interview with somebody. It's interesting. And I don't really know why. The Horror Party Beach was shot in Stamford, Connecticut. So, a touristy location with a beach. It's got, a teenage band in it, and they do all the music for it, actually. And it's not bad. The movie's bad, but the music's not so bad. Oddly enough, though, I don't know why he did it, but he dubs the female lead in it throughout the whole movie. And I can't imagine that I don't know if she had a bad lisp, or I was going to say if she had this really thick Southern accent, but she didn't, because she was from, that part of the country. She had gone to school with Jackie Kennedy. So, I mean, this is no cracker. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so I don't know why she's dubbed, but she is dubbed throughout the whole movie. And I just can't figure out why, because the person who dubs her isn't particularly good at it. So, but anyway, the female lead is a little old to be in a beach movie. I looked up, well, she's passed away, unfortunately, but this woman's in her early 30s, and she's supposed to be like late teens, early 20s. I think she's supposed to be in college, well, not as a non-traditional student, but she's a little older. And the guy, the lead in it, I think was her husband. I can't find the smoking gun here. I can't find the silver bullet, but they had the same last name, but they both had the last name of Lyon. Now, she is billed as Alice Lyon, and he's billed as John Scott, but his real name is John Lyon. So I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't find out whether or not that they had been married at the time, or were still married when she passed away, or what. But I found that kind of interesting. And to tell you the truth, in watching them in this movie, I would never have put these two together. So I'm not really. Maybe they were married, but it just wasn't a very good match. Who knows?
Or they were brother and sister, or cousins, or.
Well, that could be. They could have been related, and that would have explained the lack of physical chemistry. Well, I guess that depends on what part of the country.
Game of Thrones didn't exist back then. So.
Well, true. But The Horror Party Beach is one of Del Tenney's movies. He spent very little in the production of it. The production of it was about 2 weeks long. He had the flu during production of the film. And he's in it. He's a gas station attendant in the film, and he's got a few lines. When he does fine. But he was very sick in it, and the second unit director did a lot of the movie. because he was ill. The movie's a lot of fun. The Horror Party Beach turns out to be these sea monsters that have been created because they're dumping nuclear. They're dumping. Well, I can't say that it's nuclear waste, but it's some form of horrible radioactive waste. I guess it is nuclear into the bay here, and the drums, as soon as they hit the bottom, immediately open up, and it coats these fish skeletons and a human one too. I don't know why that's down there, but it coats all of them, and then they sort of transmogrify into the Horror Party Beach, which are, well, they are horrific looking, but not in a terrifying way.
Right.
But the movie is so much. All of Del Tenney's movies are a blast. They're so much fun to watch. And some of, I'm not going to say that the movies are terrible, because they're not terrible. You could see that he definitely had a limited pocketbook, but spent the money. They were shot well. The lighting's good. The cinematography's good. The edits are fine. There's no jump cuts or anything like that. I mean, they're made well. He just didn't have much money.
He seems to have really sexualized his promotions. I don't remember the movie being this risque, as I'm seeing the black and white stills. And also a piece of trivia: somebody made a Horror Party Beach monster doll, so you can purchase that if you so wish.
Well, back in the 60s, when the film was out, you could buy a comic that they produced. And the movie did really well at the box office. It was released in 64 on a double bill, and he made over $1 million
Oh, wow.
with the movie. He made so much money that he stopped making films because well, yeah. And that, at that time, $1 million, unfortunately, now is that much money. But back then, it was, it was everything. That was your goal. And he went into business for himself. And then eventually, in his later years, did come around to make another movie, which didn't really go anywhere. But he made some really cool, fun films. He made another movie that's, as my partner will tell you, I've watched 1 million times and I love it. It's called I Eat Your Skin.
I remember that one too.
Oh, that movie is just wonderful. It's so bad, but so good at the same time. It's public domain. Horror Party Beach is not public domain, but I Eat Your Skin is, because Del Tenney got it in the can and was going to make another film to release it on a double bill, and just never did. So in the early 70s, he sold it to another producer, and the other producer had just made a film called I Drink Your Blood.
Yes.
Which is a great horror film. And there again, it's cheap, but it makes your skin crawl. It was gross. I Drink Your Blood's a really gross movie, but the producer needed another film to release it with on a drive-in double bill, and he bought Del Tenney's movie, which he had originally titled as Voodoo Bloodbath. He just retitled, and the new person retitled it as I Eat Your Skin, which is a fantastic title. I like it way better than Voodoo Bloodbath. but there's no skin eating in I Eat Your Skin, and it's, in some ways, I mean, it's funny and tragic, and oh golly, it's got a lot of soul. It's got, Greg is right, extremely entertaining. You will giggle and laugh, and it's like, but there again, it's well made. I mean, it's not that bad, in terms of production quality. I mean, it's all right, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And that's kind of my definition of a good movie: something that you enjoy watching, no matter what the quality. if it makes you laugh, if it keeps you engrossed from beginning to end, that's criteria for a good movie, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Good for
in a
you.
perverse kind of way.
Well, it's like I like movies that transcend their genre, where
Yes,
in
me too.
making creative decisions because they didn't have resources of some kind, they came up with something mind-blowingly interesting or unique. And even if they can't quite pull it off, the very fact that they attempted it. I like the sword and sorcery genre as well as sword and sandal. And there are an unlimited number of really horrendous sword and sorcery films, but they're classics. And there's only been one or
Yes.
two that I would consider to be unwatchable. The rest are watchable and they're very entertaining. They're not good by anybody's standard, but they're phenomenally entertaining.
Well, and on that, I'm going to launch into an unwatchable one. So, although it's one I ran not too long ago as the movie of the day. It's The Beach Girls and the Monster.
Okay, better
I
one
mean,
up.
to tell you the truth, it's short, so it is watchable. But it was shot by 40s matinee idol John Hall. It was his baby, his production. He did movies with Maria Montez, so and he was a handsome male lead in the wartime 1940s. He's in Cobra Woman and Arabian Nights and all those lush universal color early 1940s escapist movies to make people forget that they were having to make great sacrifices in order to help win the war. A time that pulled the whole nation together, and I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. But by the 1960s, John Hall had gained quite a bit of weight, was no longer the handsome matinee idol, but still had the wherewithal to pull a film together. And it's the one he pulled together, unfortunately, is Beach Girls and the Monster. But like I said, it really is. It's not horrible. I mean, it's watchable, and he's got a decent cast in it, to tell you the truth. It's an actress that she worked forever and never managed to be in a good picture. Her name was Sue Casey. She worked from the 40s, up until the 90s, and was in small roles in good movies and bigger roles in not so good movies. She's very attractive, talented. She, no matter what the material was, I mean, you can tell she's given it her best. She's believable. She can deliver a line. She's good. She was good. She deserved better than what she got. But she made it farther than 99.9% of other people who want to be actors. So, success. She won. And excuse me. Sorry. A director we haven't talked about too much is one of my favorite ones, and I've subjected my poor partner to a number of his movies over the years. His name's Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Yes, Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Yes, who is famous for making the Blood trilogy, starting off with Blood Feast, a movie that's not made all that well, but is riveting from beginning to end. Whenever I start watching it, I'm hooked and I'm into it till the end. And my favorite movie of his is 2000 Maniacs.
Yes.
Was made in 1964 with a lot of actors who weren't famous for the most part, but actually had a little bit of acting experience, so it's pretty good. And I love the plot line for 2000 Maniacs. These Northerners are intentionally diverted off the highway by these Southerners to lure them into this town so they can murder them. That's kind of the way I feel about the Deep South. It's like, I guess I shouldn't say that. That's not true. And I live in West Virginia, so I really can't point fingers. But you know what I mean. I mean, it's that North versus South dichotomy, which used to be more than it is now. that you used to. You even 100 years after the Civil War, I think people still felt it. And I think a lot of that's largely gone away. But the movie of his that I wanted to talk about, which fits the format or the theme for tonight's topic, is called Color Me Blood Red, which I own a copy of. I actually haven't seen it for a while, but in some ways it's kind of my favorite of the trilogy. It's made of the three. I think it has the highest production values, and shot in Florida, and it's in there again, one of these idyllic settings. The movie revolves around this kind of insane, really creative painter who can't find the right color of red for his canvases. And he bumps off his girlfriend, and he literally bleeds her dry, trying to get blood, to put on his canvas, which looks red, but as we all know, when blood dries, it's kind of a beer brown kind of color. It's not vivid or bright or anything. It is when it pops out of your arm if you cut yourself or something like that. But when it dries, it's not red. But if you can get past that, you'll love Color Me Blood Red. And he goes on a real streak too. he's turning out a lot of pain.
I have a story about Herschel Gordon Lewis. A lot of things in entertainment never happen. You pursue these paths and they take you to weird places. And
he had kind of a rough patch to it.
And we wanted to do an entertainment thing that eventually led to a podcast of all things. But for a while, it was going to be like a movie or a TV show, and talking to a lot of people. And I met this wrestler who knew Herschel Gordon Lewis. So I knew somebody else who knew Herschel Gordon Lewis. So then the conversation started on maybe doing something with Herschel Gordon Lewis. And this dragged on for months, and all these ideas flying back and forth. And we created personas. We got a mall place to agree to let us film there. We got all sorts of locations. And again, nothing ultimately eventually happened, but it was a fun adventure. I never talked to the man, but he was there in the background throughout the whole thing. And we rewatched his movies, and so we knew what kind of to expect, made our own improvements on what we were going to produce. But again, one of the things that never happened.
He had kind of a rough patch in life too. I mean, several times actually. He sort of like a phoenix. He would do something great and then immediately hit rock bottom. He was arrested. He was incarcerated, I should say, in the 1970s for a couple of years for fraud. Very serious fraud. Not looking down my nose, but I mean, I'm not good. And this was after his film career. He rode the wave of exploitation until he just didn't have it anymore. He didn't have the skill, and the stuff that he was making, which had been he had started out with nudies, in the early 60s, and moved into horror films when nudies became passé. And then the type of horror film he was making became passé, and he saw the writing on the wall, got out of the business, but then got into a business that was kind of shady. Eventually he redeemed himself. He became sort of the king of direct marketing, and made a very handsome living, doing marketing seminars, writing books. I don't know if he was actually good at marketing, but he was good at marketing. Which if you can sell nothing, I mean, that is the sign of a brilliant person. Very savvy, very bright, and interestingly, started his career as a college English teacher.
Oh wow!
So I mean, that really hits home for us, because that's how we both started our careers as college English teachers. We didn't go on to commit fraud or anything like that.
Which is a good thing, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, we both sort of hung with it. Yeah, so
But
but
we have
anyway,
weird movies that push
but
the envelope.
I love Herschel Gordon Lewis's movies. I have seen the majority of them. I'm not a nudie fan, so I got to admit I haven't seen The Adventures of Lucky Pierre or anything like that. Just not my thing, But the horror movies, my thing. So I have seen all those. One of my favorites is you don't hear about or see much very often, although it is on DVD. Is called Gruesome Twosome. That it's got the best title, and other than 2000 Maniacs is probably my favorite Herschel Gordon Lewis movie. Although that's hard to pick because I like the Wizard of Gore a lot. I like the Gore Girls.
I remember the Gore Girls. I remember the Wizard of Gore. Gruesome Twosome, I don't remember very much, so I'm looking it up.
Gruesome Twosome takes place in a wig shop.
I see that now.
It's really different, and it's more so than most of his movies. It's kind of tongue in cheek. It's kind of winking at the viewer. It's like, yeah, we're all in on the joke. Something, and maybe another good movie of his, one I really like. It's actually not such a bad movie, to tell you the truth. It's called Something Weird.
I saw Something Weird, and somebody made a Gruesome Twosome too.
Oh, why? I don't think the first one was a big blockbuster, so I'm not really sure why you'd do it again.
Nonetheless,
You know
there
what?
are posters if you Google it and look at images.
I love high camp. Low camp is often kind of harder to swallow. Sometimes if it's done well, if it's done well enough, I guess I should say, low camp can be great. But Gruesome Twosome too. I don't think I'm going to invest an hour and a half. There's a ton more movies that we could talk about, and we will talk about in.
And we will. I can see part 2 and a part 3.
Well, and there's so many. At first, when Greg and I were talking about a topic for this month's retro sci-fi horror cinema, he's actually the one who came up with the topic. But I do like to theme things according to what time of year it is, and this is we're coming out. Well, I mean, depending on how you look at it, we're coming out of the pandemic. People are traveling or not because gas is $5 a gallon. And we're getting into the peak of travel season here pretty soon, and there's a shocking number of movies about summer vacation gone awry. I never really thought about it. Until I started doing the research for it, and I just kept thinking of different titles, and then I would look at some online stuff, and I was like, wow, these people have come up with a list of like 50 vacation horror movies, a lot of which I hadn't even heard of, and some of which are recent, like within the last 15 years or so. I had no idea how popular I'm taking a vacation, oh no. And it turns into
there are plenty of Christmas ones, New Year's ones. We've done those before in the past.
I love Christmas horror movies. Those are
they're like Ann Arbor Day horror movies, or something, some of the more obscure Groundhog. No, there was a Groundhog Day. It was a comedy, it wasn't a horror, but maybe there's a horror Groundhog Day.
Actually, I wouldn't really call Groundhog Day a comedy. I watched that movie, and I know that there are people who love it, but I can't stand it. I think it's a terrible film. Bill Murray is annoying and grating in it. I just don't like the film. I never cared for it, and I find it just very annoying. To tell you the truth, there's a lot of, I don't have anything against Bill Murray, but sometimes his performances cross the threshold from funny to grating. And for me, Groundhog Day is that movie. It's just
Or maybe it is a horror movie, so we'll put it in the
well,
horror movie.
and this is another unpopular opinion, but I despise Ghostbusters, and a lot of it's because of Bill Murray. He's terrible at it. He is. He's awful. He's awful at it. He chews on the scenery, just any kind of style, and with reckless abandon. It's just not good. And that everybody loves it. I don't. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But and I don't know how many times they've tried to remake it. And why remake a movie that was so horrible to begin with? I don't get it. I despise that film. I think it's Ghostbusters is awful. Sorry. Sorry people who love it, but I think it's terrible. And I can give you a million reasons why I think it's terrible.
Thank you. And again, everyone has their own tastes about movies and what's watchable, what's unwatchable. So,
well, I like terrible films, so I can talk. I mean, gosh, I just waxed philosophic about Color Me Blood Red. So, and it's a terrible movie. It's but it's really gruesome and graphic, and it's in color, so the blood looks good.
So what should we call our second show? Should we call it more beach horror or beach horror 2?
We'll just call it Beach Horror 2 Electric Boogaloo. How about that?
Okay, that sounds awesome. So that's all the next one. Thank you again. I greatly enjoyed this hour, as I always do. Thank you, Greg, for your commentary in the background, and for your doing the research and suggesting the topic. And I look forward to our next one. How can people find you and Brian's Drive-In Theater? It is a shrine to B movies, and everyone should experience it much more than once. I do.
Well, you know what? I am practically done with the revision of the sci-fi and horror pages at Brian's Drive-In Theater. I actually have all the HTML work done. I just have to do a few things to graphics. So everything will be completed by the weekend there in the horror and science fiction section at Brian's Drive-In Theater. And if you want to find me online, it's briansdrivein-theater.com. And if you want to interact with me on Facebook and tell me that I have terrible taste in movies because I just bashed Ghostbusters and Groundhog Day and Bill Murray, so I'm sure to get some hate mail from his attorneys. Oh, yes, I do love Zombieland, and I was a huge fan of his. I like Stripes, Meatballs, Saturday Night Live when I was a kid. He was one of my idols. I loved him. I just think he's terrible in Ghostbusters, but everybody's terrible in Ghostbusters, so it's okay.
He played Hercules in a Saturday Night Live skit that I've been trying to locate for years now.
Ah, okay. No, I love Bill Murray, but those movies are, and they keep remaking Ghostbusters. Why? I just don't get it.
Recently, I think I haven't seen either of them yet.
And who wants to? Oh, God, that movie was horrible. It's just, I remember it was the big summer movie in 1984, and I was 18 years old, just home from college, and everybody wanted to go see it, so we went to see it, and I'm just sitting there like, oh, I can't stand it, and nobody was laughing or anything in the theater either. And we walked out, I'm like, I thought this was a comedy. And it wasn't. I mean, like I said, nobody was laughing, and it got onto television, and all of a sudden, it's everybody's favorite movie. I don't know how.
Again,
Sorry,
thank
Bill.
you very much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to our next conversation. And thanks again. Enjoy your upcoming vacation. May nothing horrible happen on the beach. And
Me too.
And ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. There will be a sequel to this episode. So stay tuned. Let's see if we can get a special effect or two or something in here to commemorate the event. And when you're finished with your website, let's have a website relaunch party.
That might be a few years, but I'll try. I've actually made pretty good progress with it.
You should make a GoFundMe or Indiegogo or one of those pages too. Maybe people would like to contribute toward the rebirth of your site.
What to pay for my therapy as as I bust my hump trying to get all this done. That'd be about it.
Well, I think your site is a work of art, and I'm glad I stumbled across it years ago.
Thank you.
And it turned out when I was looking at what I was doing at the time, I actually found your site fairly early on. So
Well, and you know what? A lot of people who follow me on Facebook have said the same thing, which I find interesting. I've got this really great core group of people who are incredibly supportive, who have sent me a lot of information and photographs, and have been a huge help over the years. And it's great. I mean, say what you will about social media, I enjoy it,
Me too.
and I enjoy interacting with people who are interested in all of this. And there's more of us than you would ever think.
And Brian is not kidding. He will answer your, he responded to my initial email, and that's how this whole conversation started. And now I consider him a friend. So, he will get back to you. So when he says he's reachable and you can contact him, he genuinely means it. And on that note,
just don't stalk me.
or send weird things. Let's say good weird things. Anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in. If all goes well, this will be on YouTube in around 2 hours. If not, it'll be on sometime tomorrow. Thanks again, Brian. Thanks again, Greg. Have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you soon.
Take care, Hercules.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.